I'm Edward Buckney, director of the Chicago Police Training Academy. In keeping with Mayor Washington's desire for a strong police department, the city of Chicago is offering an examination for police officer. To qualify, you must be both a resident of Chicago and 20 years of age by the end of 1987. Applications will be accepted during the month of November on the 11th floor of City Hall. For other locations and more information, call 372-9244.
Channel 2, WBBM Television.
From CBS News in Washington, this is the CBS News Night Watch. This morning, Hustler magazine versus Jerry Falwell. Falwell says the magazine's satire hurt his feelings. Now it's up to the Supreme Court, and political cartoonists are worried.
I think it'll have a terribly chilling effect on my business.
Yeah.
To have this happen.
His falls outside the realm of anything plausibly covered by the Falwell case.
Literary giant James Baldwin has died, leaving behind his words of beauty and anger about the black experience.
I was born here almost 60 years ago. I'm not going to live another 60 years. You always told me it takes time. It's taken my father's time, my mother's time, my uncle's time, my brother's and my sister's time, my nieces and my nephew's time. How much time do you want for your progress?
And New Age music. Some think it's yuppie music, but its musicians say it's much more.
A very spacey, kind of wandering sort of sound to it. And some of it is very thought out, very structured type of music.
All that, plus two former defense secretaries look at how Reagan's doing. We'll debate a plan which guarantees that some white-collar criminals go to jail. And we'll have a report on some special music which was inspired by a disaster. Now, here is CBS News correspondent Charlie Rose.
Good morning. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court will consider whether Larry Flynt and his Hustler magazine had their right to free speech violated. The case involves Reverend Jerry Falwell, who sued Hustler over an advertising parody in the magazine. It portrayed Falwell as an incestuous drunkard. A jury decided that Falwell had not been libeled by the ad, but it did award him $200,000 for emotional distress. That has set off a debate about whether such awards will discourage free speech. Joining us now, Pat Oliphant, one of America's premier political cartoonists, and Bruce Fine, an attorney and visiting fellow in constitutional studies at the Heritage Foundation. Welcome. Pat, you're not a lawyer, are you?
No,
all right.
not to be.
Turn to Bruce for a little legal edification here. What's the Sullivan decision with respect to libel? Often mentioned. I'm not sure everybody understands what it says. What does that say? And therefore, what was the law that was either extended or circumscribed by this decision?
In 1964, the Supreme Court held that there could be no libel judgment against either a public official or a public figure, which would include Jerry Falwell, who's a public figure, unless there was proof that a falsehood had been published and had been published with malice, that is, with a very high degree of knowledge that what was being published was indeed false.
Right.
Now, what happened in this particular case with regard to Jerry Falwell was that he couldn't really recover, since he was a public figure under the New York Times rule, because there was a little small, minuscule print at the bottom of this parody which said this is to be taken in fun,
right,
which sought to basically retract the statement that his first sexual encounter was with his mother and while he was inebriated. Therefore, Mr. Falwell sought to recover under another tort theory called intentional infliction of emotional distress. Since that tort is not covered by the libel standard of New York Times and Sullivan, he was not required to prove a false fact. He was only required to prove that the publication here of the parody was done with the intent to inflict emotional distress, and indeed he was distressed because of this dissemination with regard to millions of readers that his first sexual encounter was when he was inebriated with his mother.
Even though the thing said ad parody not to be taken seriously, and even though it was in Hustler magazine, which people know what to expect, I guess, when they read that magazine.
That is correct.
All right, so he says, I got an emotional distress from this. It made me lose a lot of sleep, and I was not very happy, and so therefore, what does this...
He was so
do?
emotionally distressed, Charlie, that he sent this out to his supporters. Copies of
Raised
this out.
$800,000.
$800,000. He gets. He's looking for $200,000. He comes out $600,000 ahead.
Yeah, but your real objection to this is because you think that a lot of people who write and who are engaged in communication, including cartoonists, might also inflict emotional distress, and
Well,
that if we restrict that...
We probably do. In fact, that's part of our job.
You intend to?
Not with malice. We try to do everything.
But if a politician's uncomfortable about something that a cartoon that you draw, you're not altogether dissatisfied by that?
No, you have to remember that cartooning is opinion. That's the basis of everything. It is opinion. And it's my opinion.
Right. That's why it's on the editorial page.
Or the op-ed page is where it should be, because it's like a column.
Right.
Every few years, especially in a right-wing climate, we have to go to bat for these sleazeballs who put unnatural strains on our...
We're talking about Mr. Flint now.
Yes, we are. That's not...
Well, I think Pat has hit upon a very astute point here, and that is the typical cartoonist like Pat is expressing opinion.
You don't think that Mr. Oliphant, if this decision is upheld, has anything to worry about?
I don't think so at all. I think that the decision would be very narrowly confined to the situations where there's assertions of false facts in the cartoon or in the parody here. Second, where it's purposely the statement that this is a parody is in such diminutive print that you can hardly read it. It's like reading the back of an insurance policy to read that print. And lastly, it's confined to situations where a person is not trying to ridicule government or an occupant of government office. In that realm, I agree with Pat entirely. Hands off, the citizens rule, the people rule, and you can criticize government and its occupants anything you want. Private life is a little different.
All right, let me well, go ahead.
You get the camel's nose under the tent like that, and where is it going to end?
That's why we have a Supreme Court to stop any kind of further intrusion. That's what we have a court for.
Let me just, this is a little bit, understanding your point, this is a little bit moot, but nevertheless, let me take a look at some of the cartoons that Pat has drawn and give you a sense of how some people might say, after reading this decision, he's inflicted emotional distress on me and I'm going to sue him. Take a look. This is who we got treed here, North, Secord, Reagan, or Gary Hart?
I suppose they could have all sued for hurt feelings.
Yeah. Out of the way, swine. Colonel North, famous defender of liberty, super patriot, and national hero, is coming. Did you intend to inflict emotional distress on Oliver North?
Oliver North, if possible.
Yeah. But did you really? I mean, you're making fun of him, aren't you? Here comes a guy marching.
A
lot of people say super patriot is not a pejorative term.
Well, no. But the way he was played, it's pejorative.
But I think Pat's cartoons here demonstrate why his falls outside the realm of anything plausibly covered by the Falwell case.
We'll be right back, and maybe we'll take a look at this ad and see why it's caused such emotional distress for Jerry Falwell. Back in a moment.
Nails for teens. Smaller size is what she means. Miss Lee press-on nails. Color. Wow. Innocence. Oh, yeah? Just peachy. Key. Bubble gum. Awesome. Fresh grapes. Neat.
Now it's Miss Lee press-on nails, made for smaller hands. Easy to put on as regular Lee press-on nails, and with 4 extra nails. 24 in all for a more perfectly beautiful fit.
Fun at your fingertips. Miss Lee press-on nails. Press on.
Introducing Lee Sculptured Nails. Long-lasting like luxury salon nails, but affordable because you do them at home.
Lee Sculptured Nails. Affordable. But are they easy?
Like nothing you've ever used before. If you can polish your nails, you can do it. Glue on an extension.
No form.
Brush on the overlay.
Like nail polish.
Smooth shape and polish.
Lee Sculptured Nails are easy.
And long-lasting like salon nails. Plus, they're affordable.
Lee Sculptured Nails.
Who else but Lee?
Life has just become a little easier.
Hey, folks, it's 7:02 a.m. and
Life has just become a little safer. Life has just become a little lazier. Life has just become the clapper.
Clap on, clap off, clap on, clap off, the clapper.
The clapper lets you turn things on or off from anywhere in the room. Just plug in the clapper and a television, lamp, stereo, almost anything you want to clap on and off.
Clap on, clap off, clap on, clap off, the clapper.
Give it a big hand.
The clapper is now available at all Osco, Walgreens, Woolworth stores. Participating Ace, True Value, Service Star hardware stores. Makes a great gift.
We are back. Let me take a look at this ad because this is a decision that concerns a lot of people who feel strongly about civil liberties. There it is in living color. First of all, the argument is made, Bruce, that this was in Hustler magazine. And people didn't take that seriously. And people who read that know that this is a parody because they do ads that are parodies all the time. Now, if it's a parody, if that assumption was made, would Mr. Falwell have had a case?
I think so, because what was
even though
what
it was
was
known
intended,
to be a joke?
Because the jury found that the use of the ad was intended for the purpose of inflicting emotional distress upon Mr. Falwell.
All right.
That was the malicious intent behind this
Let's go
advertisement.
Pat raises the point very well. It's the question of the camel's nose under the tent.
I think it'll have a terribly chilling effect on my business.
Yeah.
To have this happen, to have this sustained, because editors in this country were nervous enough
timid
now.
as they are.
Yeah. But Pat, let me give you this. Suppose what the court says, Pat, is that we clearly are restricting the recovery for intentional infliction of emotional distress to persons who are not parodied as government officials or by action taken as a government officer. Then you've got a clear safe harbor. You know, when you're parodying Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North or others, you're outside the Falwell case.
There are people in public life, like Falwell, who involve themselves very much in government.
Why are you making this distinction for government officials? Because the public process in America, the public debate is carried on by people who hold no official office.
I understand.
And you're one of them.
Yes, well, that's true. The difference is that the government is a servant of the people, and the people have a right to criticize it anytime, any place, anywhere, without any fear of retribution or retaliation or judgment. That's not necessarily true with regard to persons who occupy
So
still
no matter
private
what you
status.
say about a politician, regardless of how you parody a politician, as far as you're concerned, that's okay. If he had an elective office in your judgment, there would have been no basis for an emotional distress suit of any kind.
That is
and if,
correct.
in fact,
That's
he worked
fair.
at the Treasury Department and nobody knew him, but he was an elected member of the government and he was parodied this way, no problem for you.
Correct.
In terms of denying a lawsuit.
That is
All right,
correct.
suppose but as long as a person doesn't have a job, no matter how visible, doesn't have a government job, no matter how visible he or she is, therefore they have a cause of action, right?
If one can prove
Emotional
that
distress.
there was this malice behind the publication and it was intended to cause emotional distress.
Yeah, and he got caught on malice here because he pretty much acknowledged that in a videotape deposition, did he not?
That is
That he
correct.
intended to do that.
Yes.
What about a comedian who stands up in a room of 100 people and makes fun of Jim Baker and says a lot of things? You know, I mean, there's a joke going around Washington about Jim Baker and how he met Tammy Faye. And Jim Baker says, that's caused me enormous emotional distress, and he sues him. Should he have a cause of action?
I think he has a cause of action. Now, Charles, you've got to remember you don't automatically win because you make an allegation. You've got to convince a jury that indeed
It caused you emotional distress.
emotional distress. Now, in that circumstance, if I was defending the comedian, I'd say, listen, this information's been out on the public record for months, if not longer. How could there be any emotional distress? It's impossible to aggravate this particular fact.
Yes, sir. Go down the line, though, comedians. People who write reviews of television shows, for example, may say something that it causes enormous... their television critics have, and John Simon, a Broadway critic who writes for New York Magazine, those people have said things that cast enormous... they draw portraits.
But not with
art
malice, Charlie. The typical one
Well, I
in
don't know.
professional
Some cases you could
capacity,
make that
they're
point.
discharging their job, and you don't find the malice that was at issue here in the Hustler magazine case where Mr. Flint clearly was acting
you're
with
saying
malice.
malice, and after that unfortunate deposition, with respect to video deposition, the attorneys for him came back and said, look, he was just having fun. Go ahead.
Well, I say there's constructive malice and destructive malice.
No, but the Supreme Court has clearly held it can't be subjective malice. You've got to demonstrate an actual state of mind. It's not easy to prove. And when you have these very substantial evidentiary hurdles, people just don't march into court and file allegations unless they've got something. It's costly to do that, Charles. You can't get an attorney to come and file suits like this unless there's some possibility of recovery. I think you're vastly overstating the slippery slope argument. I think this case is likely to be very confined to Mr. Falwell, and it gives the message that it'll send will be only a message.
You know what the message it is sending to a lot of people is, we know you can't get anything under libel, but there may be another way to get back at people who write or draw or say things you don't like.
I don't think that's what the Supreme Court's going to say when they issue a judgment in this matter, Charles, because they will recognize the so-called chilling effect that would occur unless there were some clear parameters placed upon this cause of action, and I have every confidence that they will do so.
We have to stop it, Charlie. Otherwise, we'll all have to end up being lawyers.
God help us if that happens. Night Watch continues. Back in a moment.
For more than 30 years, James Baldwin was one of America's premier black writers. We'll take a look back at his life and literary career next on Night Watch.